All right, everyone. It is another installment of Advanced Tactics, everyone's either favorite or hated series for one-page rules Grimdark Future, where I sort of go into the factions and dig a deep dive into them. As I've said, I haven't. I'm not going to be doing alphabetical order for these factions, but I did feel a need to at least get to Dow Union because I've played with this army several times and it's been a roughie. It's been a rough experience playing with Dow, and I felt I really needed to. I really needed to talk about this army. So, but if you're, hey, like, subscribe, and comment, I'd love to sort of get everyone's perspective on this. This is a D tier army, and I have to say the EEK, right? And it's both EEK as in the Dow seeing the other army, and also EEK as they get squished because in my competitive testing, both in my armies that I've done as well as some internal testing, boy, they get murdered. I have not won a single game with Dow yet. So maybe that paints a bleak picture, but I'm just going to sort of report on what I have found and what I have seen. If you've had success with them, let me know. I'm going to give you some thoughts about what I think can work for them. Anyway, but let's get into that. So first thing is, again, let's just go through this real fast. We're competing against the other armies. These are these assumptions, assuming a 5 or 6 game GT. And I want to clarify that about that GT. One of the things that when I'm talking about a GT, I am talking about you are going into a tournament facing other really difficult lists. And one thing to keep that in mind here is that as you're building a tournament list, you have to keep the top dogs in mind. So every one of these lists that I build for this series, I am thinking about alien hives, sisters, orcs, soul snatchers, machine cult, and even some battle. Like there are some top dog armies in there, Havoc Brothers, that a list I build these lists to think about facing those armies. So I am thinking about 3,000 points and no allies, right? All right, so with that in mind, let's take the criteria. We're just going to run through it. Flexible or strong playstyle, raw efficiency, a good spell list. I go back and and I'll talk about this with now. Good spell list, good spell list, good spell list. I think that the moment people start playing with spells and start bringing somewhere between that 3 to 6 caster tokens a turn, it's gonna be eye-opening. And they're gonna realize just how really crazy a good spell list can be. Impactful elites, cheap chaff, multiple meaningful upgrades, access to scout and ambush, and AP4 are both. The Grimdark Future is it's a close range game with the ability to scout and ambush on a lot of hand-to-hand units, and that AP4, like, this is not a game that is that there's just a lot of survivability. It's a deadly game, and it's a game that armies can get in your face real fast. And when it comes to Dow, we're going to see how that's a real big problem. And of course, being undead. All right, so how did Dow match up? They're not very flexible, and they don't actually have a good, strong play style. When I started playing Dow, I thought that they would be good at shooting, but actually they're not. Yeah, they are not good at shooting either. Certainly not good at hand to hand. They do have some efficiency. I think some of their units can be tailored to one way or another. That helps a little bit. They don't have a good spell list. They have one incredibly good spell, which is sort of the defining thing for the army, and yet we'll get into that. They only have caster 2. And so we'll talk about that spell when I go into the army list overview. But the other spells are just not there. They're one of the few armies, I think, in a D2 army. They have neither impactful elites nor cheap chaff. They don't have good chaff. A lot of their units are just pricey enough that it's difficult to throw them away. While also a lot of their units are these quality 4 units and these quality 5 units that have good shot, or as I would prefer it be called, average shot, because good shot I think is just a little bit of a misnomer. It's not good shot. They're an average shot because they're only hitting on 4s. So, I just have to sort of point that out, that, it belies that they are better at shooting than they are. Multiple meaningful upgrades. They have the tactics one, but they really need some better upgrades, including especially with that level 3 spell, which is the best thing that sort of keep them in the game. Not having caster 3 is just really rough. Their big deal is they have this spotting laser, and this spotting laser is just I have tried it. It's so expensive and it's so slow. I've ran this army against some more powerful armies. Spotting laser is just so slow. They do have access to some scout and ambush. They don't have access to a lot of AP4, not undead. So yeah, this is definitely getting into the B tier army, an army that I think that does need. If I would be working on some custom armies, I would want to give it a little love. All right, so with that in mind here, let's go into what we're going to cover here. We're going to cover some general tactics, a competitive list, then an army list overview, and I may hint at some redesigns. I'm trying to separate the two. As I've said, I can't help when I'm talking through this army some things I want to improve, but I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum, and I am going to the best of my ability, help you to win with this army. All right. So the first thing I would say is spread out those objectives. Dow do have some shooting in mass that they can do. It's not that they can't kill anything, but they've really got to maximize their range in their maneuverable shooting, and that's through spreading out those objectives. If those objectives get bunched up, an opponent is just going to march and just sit on those objectives, and you are not going to have the punching power in hand to hand to drive them off. The other thing that you have to do is it's not very glorious, but it's flee. There's times that you really need to, when you see an objective being overrun, you really almost need to just run out of the way to sort of almost draw your opponent's forces further away from the other objectives. And then the other thing, it's sort of counterintuitive, but you really do need to bring hand to hand in Dow. Like they're a shooting army, I suppose, quote shooting army. Boy, I'm I do want to apologize in advance. I'm not here to um I want to be constructive here, but it is difficult when I see Dow as an army and it's like, boy, it's a rough army to play. Um you do need hand to hand because you do need the ability, one, to just tank shots, and you do at times need to charge into units and sort of clear them off the board. You really, in Grimdark Future, you just cannot play a shooting army. With terrain being what it is and the ability for people to sort of hunker down, you've got to have units, one, to sort of tank hand to hand. Doubt is going to get charged in hand to hand, and you have to sort of accept it. So you need some hand-to-hand counterpunch, but you also need to be able at times to charge a unit. Hopefully that unit has been weakened through shooting and sort of drive it off the objective. So I do say you need to bring some hand-to-hand, and they've got at the very least some decent defensive hand-to-hand options. They're not great, but it's decent. All right, so with that in mind, let's sort of look at a competitive list, and I'm also going to sort of dig out the map again and hopefully show you how it would play. Because I'll tell you, with Dow, it is a finesse army. Um, I almost want to start playing Dow because as I've been doing this series with Dow, it presents to me a challenge. Dow are not the Dow of what we always remember in 40K that just they set up and on turn one they blow away half your army. That isn't the Dow of Grimdark Future. It's not. Dow cannot do that. Um, as I've said, Dow actually aren't that good with a shooting army. One of their core abilities is this good shot, and it's we should call it average shot because it only is hitting on quality four. But let's just go into this. So I've got a grunt leader. Now you're going to see here I've got caster two, and boy, oh boy, I really, when I built this list, did not want to run caster in this guy, but he so desperately needs to be able to get that level 3 spell. And I'll show you when I go into the army list overview, but that level 3 spell is -2 to hit for 2 units within 12. And the fact that, you know what, the best I could figure is he is going to have to just wait a turn, hide and wait, build up to those 4 caster tokens, and then on turn 2, maybe turn 3, when he gets 6, he can cast that one level 3 to give 2 units within 12 -2 to hit in melee. Ugh. that's a lot of ifs. And I want to be I'm going to be upfront when I say that there is a lot of, when I'm talking about this army, there's a lot of ifs. All right, so that's the first thing. Two grunt squads with I am running the gun drone, which is the limit two shots limited rending. I think that's actually a nice little ability just on one turn, the first turn, hopefully. You're just able to shoot off a few other units. It's going to help for 5 points. It's worth it. Two grunt squads I have running with shotguns. This is the chaff, 100 points. As I've said, Def 4, quality 5. They're I don't know. I wouldn't call them chaff, but they're the best chaff that Dow have. So there you go. You've got your chaff units. And then I have this other thing. I've got two grunt squads with the 30-inch rifles. They also have the Gundra in here, but so they are my chaff. But the big thing, and you're going to see when I show you the map, they're going to be sort of spreading out in the extremes. These two grunt squads are almost going to be used as bait to sort of hide in some corner, maybe shoot things with their 30-inch range, and hopefully draw the enemy to have to expend resources to kill them. That's the goal of those two grunt squads. I've then got a spotter squad. Pulse carbines are okay. The spotter squad is really doing the same thing as the grunt squad. It's going to be annoying. I have a scout unit, so I can sort of put them in a corner, put them somewhere where an opponent is going to have to commit resources to kill them. Even if these spotters never shoot, even if they run, even if they hide behind terrain, hopefully an opponent, I can draw the opponent to commit resources to kill this squad. So that's sort of what the grunts and the spotter squads are doing. They're chaff, being there annoying, being their bodies to die. So the other part of the army is the two units of 6-man battle suits that I have armed with the energy shield, so shield wall, and I've got them in their plasma swords and their bashes. Boy, I would have loved these guys to have some sort of AP weapons, maybe a deadly weapon. They, like I said, their bashes and plasma swords. These guys are just not going to kill anything. They're only quality 4 too. They're def 3. What this two battle suit units are meant to do is they're sort of just going to walk up and shoot things with their fuser, their suit fuses, maybe do some deadly wounds, and hopefully they can just tank some damage. They, at the very least, they're def 2 with the shield wall. Maybe they can tank some damage. And with the ambush, you can put them. So these guys with ambush, they can land and they can charge maybe like a Devastator squad, or maybe they can charge a support platform. They can do some damage, and hopefully that's just enough damage to pick up something off the board. Hopefully they can survive maybe one round with an elite unit charging them in hand to hand. If, with Dow, these battle suits are only quality 4. So a big part about playing Dow, especially in my experience playing them, you are desperately hoping to get those 4 up quality rolls for your battle suits, because it's a big deal actually. If you can roll that 4 up, those battle suits are going to stick around for another turn, and they're going to be able to just soak damage. These battle suits are meant to sort of kill really weak units and then to be damage sponges. That's sort of what the battle suits are meant to do. So a big part of the army that I think a lot of the army is trying to do is these gun drones. I have two 10-man squads with regeneration, and they've just got these 2-shot rending. This is actually a pretty good squad. Fearless, flying, good shot. It's like I said, 20 shots shooting with rending. A lot of my army is just going to be trying to protect these gun drones for as long as possible. These gun drones are going to have to do a lot of work in the army, while also being relatively tanky. Def 4 with regen, sort of tanky. They've got fearless, so they may also be able to absorb some damage as well. But I'm going to try to protect them as much as possible. And the big thing that I have in the army is just a TIE Titan with 2 plasma swords. Again, no AP on this guy. I'd love if he had a better AP, but he's just got 16 AP, 1 attacks, and rending. It's not a lot. He will kill some things. Like I said, he's got, 16. He's got 22 attacks with being AP1 and AP2, rending. He's got 2 shots with his fuser. The big thing the TIE Titan is that is that quality three. That's a big deal. He's not, by the way, fearless. So he's relatively cheap. I've really struggled to build army lists for Dow. I've really considered putting in two Tide Titans in the army. It just doesn't work. I don't have enough models. Trying to do two Tide Titans really means that you're going to sort of almost go head to head with an opponent, and you just can't do that with Dow. But one Tide Titan, it can kill some stuff. The big thing, it's also got survivability. It should be able to really tank some wounds and just stall the opponent enough that you can hopefully shoot down some of those elite squads. So that's the army at work. Let's sort of bring back this battlefield that with custodians. So the first thing you're going to see here is that as I was placing these objectives, one of the things that as a DAO player you should do, spread the objectives out. So you can see here on if when I was placing these objectives, I put the two on the bottom on the far sides of each other. I mean, like the extremes, right? One in the middle is just always going to happen, but just have like as much as possible, try to spread those objectives far to the extremes as possible. So that's the first thing I was just trying to show you in practice. Then how would we set up here? So if I can't imagine what my opponent was going to do, but I do have enough units that I can sort of place things. So like those grunts, you see those grunts on the very far bottom left and bottom right. Those are my 30-inch range rifles. They are just far back there in the corner. They're really just meant to sort of draw an opponent in. And then the big thing here is you can see I've got my two shotgun grunts in the center with the Tide Titan and the leader. And all those units are meant to do is to sort of protect those gun drones in the center, right? That's all what they're meant to do is just to protect those gun drones so that those gun drones can sort of get some value. And then you see on the top right, one thing I could do is I could set some of those spotters in the far corner, right, to hopefully sort of draw an opponent away. All right, so how would this work when a battlefield happens? So let's suppose the opponent goes and maybe he spreads out across the board, maybe slightly committing to the left of the battlefield for me. So if this happened, the first thing I would do is, so suppose he comes forward. So on maybe turn two or turn three, I would sort of you can see here what I'm doing. I'm avoiding him. I'm avoiding the big part of the army that I'm worried about, which is on the left. And I'm basically moving in and having all the shooting go to one side of the field. That hopefully on that right flank, I'm able to clear out the majority of those units and hopefully just clear out the entire right side of the field. The other thing is that when I can bring my battle suits behind the enemy here, so that now I have sort of put him in an awkward position where he has to commit one way or another, right? Those battle suits being together, they're not great in hand to hand, but hopefully those battle suits can come in, maybe kill some heavy weapon teams, maybe kill a tank, do something that, like I said, pick the fights that they can win, and then contest that objective behind the enemy. And then at this point, sort of force the enemy to go wherever the enemy is going to go. I'm going to back off while also peppering him with shots here. You can also do it the other way here. So suppose the enemy uh, drove towards the right of the field, right? Well, I would do the opposite here. You can see actually the spotters are just running away from the enemy advance. My army is sort of shifting to the left, focusing its firepower on the left flank and then dropping the battle suits behind them. Now, obviously, this is an extremely simplified version of a battlefield, so keep that in mind. What I'm trying to show in this very simple battlefield is the general premise about how Dow, I think, could do well, which is to avoid the big parts of the enemy, shoot the weak flank, and to sort of almost sort of cordon off those objectives on the left or the right, right? If he goes, ideally, you would love your opponent to actually set up to spread evenly across the field because then you can pick a flank, pepper that one flank, and then sort of force the opponent to kind of wrap around while giving him two objectives and sort of taking the other extremes. So that's sort of how the army could work. I hope it helps you. I'm going to be honest that I've not. I have been playing the Dow against other competitive armies, but like I said, doing this series, it does make me want to try out Dow, and to really get into them. But this is the strategy that I've sort of worked on and come up with. I'm going to be extremely candid and say that there are certain armies that Dow are just they're going to be have there. I don't see a way of really winning. Things like Soul Snatchers, who are just going to have a lot of the scouting advantage on you. I think the alien hives with some of their burrowers, I don't know, it's going to be difficult to sort of deal with a burrower. There are some of these armies that I still don't think that Dow are going to do great, but maybe against some B and C tier armies, I think that you can take some wins. It's a very, I think that you're playing Dow. It's a challenge, and I think that if you can really win with the army, kudos to you. I'd love to sort of hear some Dow players, hear their strategies. Let me know what you think. All right. Thanks so much. Let's go into the army list. All right, so here is the Dow army list. So scrolling down here, again, good shot. So this is the average shot here. There is a really cool, which I'm so I'll sort of give my spiel about other people's custom armies. I have seen some people do some pretty good work on Dow, um, trying to help them, give them some buffs in their own custom armies. I sort of have made it a point not to post anyone's custom armies. I don't want the creator to feel that people are starting to message the creator, hey, you should tweak some things here and there. I would say if someone does want to present their army, a Dow army, any army about, hey, this is what I did, I'd happily accept it. But I want the creators to feel them to reach out to me. I don't want to like go on the community page and start pointing out armies, and then maybe that creator gets messages that they didn't want. So that's one thing that I don't. That's the reason that I'm not trying to talk about other people's custom armies. I don't. I want to leave it to those creators about what what they want to do with that army, and let them make that decision. But I do like inhibitor drone. I think that's something that is could be a way of helping them out some. They have elemental power. I so I've really wanted to fit in elemental power. Excuse me. But the big thing that Dow have, so their spell list is rough. Stealth on them is just, they have a lot of stealth drones already. So it's sort of redundant, right? Just about every one of their units have a stealth upgrade. This just doesn't help. The rust charge, oh boy, it just doesn't fit within the army. At most, you're going to be walking forward and shooting. So are you getting two at level two just to get 2 inches on advances? I don't know. Yeah, your best one is pacification. By far, like I am bringing a caster to purely to save up tokens to have that one turn that I hopefully can get that 3 up. Maybe I can wait to turn 3 and get that 2 up to cast pacification. I think pacification is a game-winning spell for you to get off. It's so important. And I'll go back to it. The fact that Dow don't have caster 3, it's a reason that I have to put these guys in D tier. Pacification is such an important spell for them, and that they can't cast it reliably and they have to wait a turn. It's rough. So but pacification is, like I said, it's really. I almost wanted to bring multiple units, but I couldn't. Like I felt. I think the heroes for Dower are just really rough. Like the battle suit. Well, let's get into the heroes. So you have your battle suit elite. I mean, the first thing you're going to note here is he doesn't have any upgrades. So he's a decent one. He's got that really key quality 3, which is pretty rare in the army, but it's difficult to bring him because he doesn't have an upgrade with it. I would have loved advanced tactics on this guy. So him not having an upgrade, it makes it difficult for me to bring him. Um, yeah, he's even at quality 3 and def 3, tough 6, he's not that tough. I think that you maybe look at the plasma sword upgrade on him as a cheap way of bringing those things. But like I said, he's not that tough. So the grunt leader is what I think that you can breed where he does have an upgrade, and it's a toss up between elemental power and council. I think the best thing you can do is just bring your caster 2, because if you can get that pacification off, it actually could win you a game. It could slow down an opponent for 2 turns, or an extra turn, give you that extra turn of shooting. Another thing that you're going to see a lot is this gunner. I think this is a pretty good upgrade. I put it where I could. 5 points for just 2 shots at rending is pretty good. It's a good way to maybe pepper injured squads as well. I did give him this here. It helps. He's only quality 4 and no fearless, so he's just honestly maybe better off alone. I wouldn't if you're going to run him as a caster, use him as chaff as well, right? I mean, he's more chaff to sort of run around and be annoying. The Grunt Squad is okay. Like I said, the big thing is they're quality 5. They waver very easy. I really would not invest anything into these squads. I'd either run them with shotguns, which is what they come with, or I'd run them with the carbines. I'm sorry, I wouldn't run the carbines. I apologize. It's way too expensive. I'd run just the rifles, spread them out, right? That's the two. Just spotting laser, and I'll go into it, is for 25 points for a 4-up chance to give something +1 to hit, and you have to spend a turn casting it. Man, it's just it feels too pricey. I would have much rather in my redesign. I'm looking about making a way to consistently give that +1 and just pay the extra points. Spotter squads are good. And again, of course, the most important thing about grunt squads, they're the best thing that you have for chaff. You do have these sniper drones, but the problem is these sniper drones are only 3 models. So I know they're fearless, but with only 3 models, it's difficult to run. I would have loved if I could give these guys a lesser weapon to make them cheaper. Boy, I mean, you could run either. I just think that the sniper drones don't work as chaff. Like with only 3 models, it's it's one thing with chaff that you need more bodies because the big deal when I think about chaff, I prefer chaff in 10-man squads that can really protect another squad, right? And with sniper drones with just 3 models, there's not enough coverage range. A lot of times an opponent can kill one and it can sort of open up a pathway to just run past the squad. So that's why I always say 5-man squads, 10-man squads are best for chaff because you have enough bodies that an opponent can't run around them. They have to charge at them, kill them, and then the squad behind them is protected. So that's the reason I don't consider sniper drones chaff. For some clarification. Spotter Squad, it's a more of an annoying unit. I like them just fine where they're at 125 with maybe a I believe they have yeah. I was gonna say boy, snipers, maybe one of them. If you want to get so one of the things that they have with these guys that you could run is the inhibitor drone, which I think is could really be good with a spotter squad. I would never give them a spotting laser, but I think the inhibitor drone, maybe you could do something fancy with it. They are pricey. The big problem with the spotter squad is that they are def 5 only and 5 models for 120. It's very pricey for um, a def 5 unit with quality 5. Boy, but maybe you can do something with the inhibitor drone. I'm always afraid to invest any sort of points into this squad because they're already just really expensive. So there you go. Okay, but spotter squad. I don't like stealth suits. Oh boy, I just don't. I don't think I think that the def 4 on them, they don't need stealth. I mean, like a lot of assumptions about Dow. I think if you're playing an opponent who is a fellow shooting army, Dow can do okay. I don't like stealth suits. I think that if you did run them, maybe you run them with the fuser combine. I would have loved it if stealth suits hit on 3s, and that may be something that I can look at. But because they only hit on 4s, and with stealth, 235 is just really pricey on them to bring. Battle suits, I think, are better. I mean, you 5 points less for an extra def 3, I think, which is pretty good. Yeah, I'll take that all day. I'll take the extra def 3. And the big thing that you can bring with them is the shield wall. I think this is almost an auto include about bringing them with the shield wall. Give them some hand to hand, not a lot of hand to hand, but give them something. Gives them to def 2. They can basically be in cover and be pretty good damage sponges. And what they have is they have what Dow desperately needs, which is some hand to hand punch. The big thing with battle suits I'll go into is quality 4. Like, ooh, boy. I am looking at ways, maybe even bringing in my own work. And I'll be honest, I'm really giving a lot of thought about Dow. but quality 3 on those battle suits almost feels merited because quality 4 is just rough on them. Maybe they get fearless. Anyway, but I'm sorry about that. Let's just talk about the army as is. That so some fusers are okay. I mean, I think you can either. I think you could run these guys just with their sunbursts, but I have still found even with an 18-inch range and ambush, they can easily get jumped. And once they get in hand to hand, I have seen these guys fall to just quality 5 models. I mean, these guys are just with quality 4 and only getting 2 bashes apiece. They don't, man, I do like them with that energy sword just to give some sort of staying power for the army. Gun drones, I think the best unit in the Dow army. With or without the regen upgrade, I do like them with regen. I think that this is your best unit. I think that you build your army around protecting these guys. Yeah, you give them regen, keep them in cover, put some bodies in front of them, and hope that you roll sixes. There you go. But I do think they're a good unit, and I think that you build your army around them. Sniper drones, as I've said, they could be, man, they really just want to be something more than they are. They're a cheap unit, but I think that, as I've said, with chaff, you've really got to have at least 5 bodies to be able to stop an opponent from charging through you and just charging the squad behind you. Their vehicles are just, I don't know, their vehicles are not good for their points. I've ran vehicles before. The big thing I've said for most of the time in I'll give you my future thoughts on just general other armies. Quality 4 vehicles for most armies aren't for me worth their points. They're just, boy, it's really difficult to somehow like these vehicles at quality 4, you're paying a lot of points for them. And all it takes is one little guy to charge and do 1 wound with a little rending weapon, and on a 4-up, those guys waver or, God forbid, rout. So I don't like any of the vehicles. I don't even want to cover them because I think quality 4 vehicles, just especially with this now, they don't need it. The TIE Titan, I think, is again a good part, and I think it almost needs to be included in every army. I've ran this guy shooting. It just, man, it doesn't feel, I think it's because it just, he doesn't have a lot of high EP on his weapons that I don't, I mean, I get the plasma, yeah, it's just 2 shots. I mean, I actually just like him stock. I like him with his 2 plasma swords. Again, he has, again, with Fear 3 and 2 plasma swords and a stomp, he actually has some pretty good counterpunch. And I think every Dow army in competitive needs a TIE Titan that's running in hand to hand. For my redesign, I'm absolutely stacking some AP on this guy. Yeah. The fighters I've looked at as well, but again, just quality 4, not that consistency that I want with the points that I would invest into it. All right, so we've covered the army list. Let's talk about some proposed fixes that I have a redesign coming, but I am taking my time looking at this. So one, I think that they do need some better level 1 and 2 spells. And I think I'll be honest, I think Caster 3 should be in all armies. And that's something that any sort of army that I look at redesigning and making better, it's going to have Caster 3 in it. They do need some more AP in hand to hand, especially for that TIE Titan. I think he at least needs to go up to AP2. Maybe have an AP3 or 4 weapon. I think that's going to help. They need some sort of morale buff. They do have things like company standards, maybe a fearless on certain units. I don't know. I don't know. It's something I'm thinking about, but they definitely need a morale buff. The spotting laser rework. So one of the things that I'm looking at is rather than using spotting laser, I know that they've got a survey vehicle upgrade that Soul Snatchers have where you can just pick a unit and give it +1 to hit. For me, I would much rather just pay more points and get that automatic +1. I may just put that as an option. So I'm just giving you some things that I'm thinking about. Access to some sort of chaff. I think they are looking at a 10-man squad. Maybe that's looking at bringing something like their versions. I'm not gonna, okay, I won't comment on what other people have done because I don't want to give other people a clue that I'm talking about this army. Okay. I'm trying to avoid because I have seen some other people do some good things with them, and but I don't want to sort of pick on one particular creator. Maybe more. Yeah, this is an army that does need some work. And It's definitely on my mind. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Always would love feedback. If you're a DAO player, let me know what your thought are. How have you found success with the army? Like, subscribe, and comment if you're in Austin. Join the Austin Alternative Gaming Freaks. Thank you, everyone.